Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Do Andrew Conspiracy. I am Mr. Andrew, and I have my lovely co-host, Mr. Do, and we're going to start today's episode as per the usual with a little breath work, conspiring together, and we're going to do a real simple technique today. It's called the two-part breath. You kind of take a partial inhale, fill up the heart space, and then go all the way deep down as far as you can go and really fill up those lungs, and then a great exhale. And we'll do that. We'll do 3 rounds of that. I like 3 always feels right. So I think closing the eyes is always a good thing too. Kind of block out the visual, calm the mind a little bit. So if you're comfortable and you're available, do that, and we'll get started. All right. All right. One big partial inhale, and a little deeper. And out. And again, in, out. And then in, and in, out. Yes. Beautiful, inspiring. And
Inspiring.
we're bringing inspiration through conspiration. I made that up. Anyway, we're here, and as you can see, I'm still in my alternate studio. I'm still in Williston, North Dakota, chilling with my parents, extended till Monday, so enjoying my time back home. I went to, so they have these trees that are super popular here in town called choke cherries. They are kind of like a mini cherry, except more tart, but they do have a little pit like a cherry, but they're like a little smaller than a marble. And so we went to that yesterday evening and got to observe. It was funny. There was a BMX demonstration, and it was called the Stunt Dudes. Anyway, it was these middle-aged white guys, and they brought their bikes and their love for Jesus. And don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of Jesus, but they were bringing it from the very odd. It seemed kind of dark. Like they introduced themselves and started talking about the wages of sin is death, and I'm looking at all these like 6-year-old kids. Like, can they possibly comprehend what they're saying? But then I also found out I went to a Billy Graham event here in town when I was young, and my mom busted out the little booklet that I had filled out when I went to that, and I went to the altar and gave my heart to Jesus and got this little book, and I was reading through the book last night. But I even wrote my age, and I didn't. I wrote 7 1/2, which is total kid stuff, right? Like,
Right.
no. I count that extra half year. That's huge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So what did the book say?
Oh man, it was pretty wild, honestly. Like from my current perspective, there was some truth in there, but then there was a lot of just like I felt like guilt and shame. I don't know how else to put it. And I was reading a little bit about the story of Jesus. I didn't get through it all, but just the baseline things is like what you know going to church and reading your Bible and all these like things that you have to do to check the list, and a lot about sin, so much about sin without what I feel like or wrongdoing, and it's like it's so vague. I just don't know how you could possibly expect a child to possibly understand what that is. And well, in my opinion, would be that they're a little misguided on their notion of what sin is. I mean, the original word, literally means to miss the mark, like an archer misses the
Right.
target.
Right.
And so I associate that with just missing the point of life. And of course, the main point of life is to have experiences and to extend love. And if you're having experiences and extending love, you're living in God's will. That is my opinion. And so
Right.
deviation from that is just like not living in that zone, and that would disconnect you from God to a certain extent. So so they're close, but I think they're just missing some nuance.
I the thing is that sin is basically a concept from the Old Testament, and Jesus came to create the covenant, the new covenant, where the law is dead. And therefore, Paul said, by faith alone are you justified. And therefore, this whole like, I'm because Jesus nullified the original curse of Adam and Eve. He was the second man. So Adam was the first man, Jesus was the second man. Jesus died and was resurrected, but the fact is that the moment Jesus died, Fred died. That was the past. That everything that had come, because Jesus' final words on the cross said it is over. It is over. So not only was religion over, the law over, this authority over and everything. And so, you know, basically one thing that I've always wondered is if Jesus was so good, why didn't he just stay on earth and rule after his resurrection? And the one thing that I've sort of like been thinking about lately is the Lord manifests in human form in the most primitive era that he can to spread his message. So Jesus lived in biblical Nazareth and Galilee. And that's why he's genius, because basically the the Lord said we need someone to help humanity, and it's going to be a suicide mission.
Hmm.
And Jesus raised his hand, and he was sent back 2,000 into the primitivity of 2,000 years ago to like plant plant the seed of the message. And and personally, in my own journey as like the as like a god or anything, the reason I needed Fred and his M16 was to protect me from from the masses that crucified Jesus. So
Yeah.
therefore,
Yeah.
therefore, but if you accepted Jesus was like the finisher of the law, then this whole idea of original sin and you die because you're destined to die because of the sin of Adam and everything. If you really think about it, that's Fred. I mean, that's what I mean by Fred. This is like the authority. I'll keep a M16 pointed at your temple to keep you in line, and you will you don't have to. You won't worship me ostensibly, but you will worship me because I can pull the trigger on the M16 anytime I want. And Dale was the trigger word for Fred's M16. And the irony of Fred's M16 is you have to use Dale to fire it, but eventually, one time you're going to use Dale and it's going to explode in your face. And that's
Hmm.
what happened to Fred.
Okay. Yeah, the Legend of Fred continues. Oh, and before we move on to your poetry, I wanted to point out my lovely thrift store
Oh,
find.
absolutely.
It's a Nike swoosh with weed stuff in it, and it says, just hit it. So,
So, speaking of 420, um, my best buddy ever, Chucky, died of a brain tumor. Probably about I've lost I think probably about 12 years ago, but whatever. He was like my biggest smoking buddy ever, and he died 2 hours before April 20th, 420.
so close.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of significance around dates for you. That's cool. All right. So, what do you have for us from
Okay,
the
so
word?
I got I got like two poems, one for the beginning and one for the end, that are the same theme about like my getting my voice back and getting in front of people and getting my message forward. So, and I might have read this one before, and if I have, I apologize, but I like it a lot. So, um, I've lost his voice. Dale was the chipmunk that roared in his field across the street from where the doctor lived, which now has been subsumed by high rises, but what was Deuster Mansion was secret spot of him with the voice that echoed across the abyss, of summit over the valley of Lower Hackensack, where Black Skip resides, and he spent many hours in communion with nature there, smoking nature and chronicling the progression of his therapy often before he was assigned to the rubber room, which was the bridge of his starliner the Dialina, where he met with many other fugitive Dewsneys, some of whom were snatched from the street, just to be confined for their own safety in difficult times of world violence, when the earth was verging on edge of endless chaos, which was arrested only by his detainment during the decade-long crisis era of his psychotic episodes, although in fact the nurses never disputed sanity he brought to the mental illness where he well, with fellow inmates fighting designs of the mind police. I think I have read that one, but that's a classic. So,
Yeah, yeah.
especially with the mind police,
Yeah,
Fred was like the director of the mind police, you know.
for sure, for sure.
But yeah. So I think today, I mean the reason I called this episode "It Hits." It's like I think this is the day where it's really going to start hitting the collective subconscious that we're out of the epoch of Fred.
Well, we
And
know that because I wore this shirt and I didn't even think about that, and it says "just hit it" on there. So
right, right.
I think we're onto something here.
And I meant uh, what we were talking about, the duality of Dale and Fred. So Fred had the M16, and Dale was like basically the diplomatic corps Fred's uh, for Fred's army. Uh, but Fred was the DEA. Fred was in fact for 35 years a drug enforcement agent. So he's the DEA, and Dale is the THC. So that's so when I talk about Fred, people might think that I'm putting him down or like sort of like desecrating his memory, and I would never do that. But he was the opposite pole of of an American trend symbolized by the DEA versus what Dale and Do stand for and what I stand for, which is THC and cannabis. And it's like an eternal battle that now has been decided with with the death of Fred. And therefore, I'm not saying THC is liberated, so and will be legalized, but but that's irrelevant. What I'm really talking about is the impact of the on the collective subconscious of the knowledge that Fred is dead, and that we are out of the shadow of the specter of war we've been under since 1947.
Liberation Day. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And but what I'm saying is this is so big, it has to be like pen dropped into like the collective subconscious because and this is what we were going to talk about is Stockholm Syndrome. We talked about we mentioned this in like one of our earlier episodes, but basically the whole world uh, is basically being liberated from the concentration camps of scarcity that have been set up for the common people for, and I'll never say the masses, for the people to keep them in slavery through fear, and consequently that fear is now a myth and an illusion, and therefore, you know, let there be no violence in the wake of no further violence.
Sure. Yeah, the Stockholm Syndrome is real. We see it everywhere. I've been having conversations with various family members and that sort of thing, trying to bring some of the ideas that have been coming in for me, and there is a lot of resistance to freedom, because it's always projected as, well, I could be free, but I don't trust anyone else to be free. And so we're going to elect people that we don't trust to tell the other people we don't trust what to do so that we can feel something. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, okay, sure. You're right, you're right. That's not insane at all.
But I mean, Pedro talks about this a lot about the ecclesias of the setup in the New Testament after basically the church that was set up, ecclesias. I think it was called after the death of after Jesus went up to heaven and everything, and but it means assembly. It doesn't mean religion. It doesn't mean it doesn't even mean church. It means like an assembly of believers, and that's really where joy and happiness can get together, when people can join together in assembly and pray and feel the presence and joy and bliss of Christ and Jesus and the King, without having to fear being judged for whatever reason, especially by a higher power which is supposed to be benevolent.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. So I guess, there's a lot of maybe discussion among people who are sort of, I like to call it at the edge of thought, right? They're not in the mainstream. They're at the edge of what's possible, and reimagining, how we would engage as a society without this outdated and crumbling hierarchical structure that does not serve us. It is not serving you. You only think it is because of this syndrome we're talking about. And a vision, for what that might look like. And part of it is getting people to awaken to that reality, right? To see that they are a prisoner in many ways in their life, and they are keeping themselves smaller to not offend this person or not break this rule. And I don't know. I had an experience just going to the hardware store just now, and I brought my dog with me, and it said right on the door, "No pets allowed, service animals only." And I looked at my dad. I'm like, "What do we do?" And he's like, "I'll see what happens." So sure enough, we walked right into the store, and the first person greeted us friendly and pet the dog, and another person, as we were leaving, greeted us friendly and pet the dog. And for me, it's just like one tiny illustration of how I could have let those words determine my behavior, but instead I let the reality of the situation actually play out. I didn't shut down preemptively, and it was oddly empowering. I don't know, it's such a small thing, but normally I would probably obey that sign and put the dog back in the car, right? But I knew I wasn't causing harm to anyone or anything, and worst case, they were going to make me take her back outside. So I tested it. And so start testing the boundaries a little bit, right? I think so many people just stay in their little box and don't test it. And I'm saying it's time to start testing it, because I think it's a lot less. There's a lot less bark to the than there is or there's more bark than there is bite.
At this point, to tell you the truth, there's not even bark. It's
Right,
all an illusion. It's all an illusion.
right.
Fred is dead. It's
Red is dead.
all an illusion that you impose on yourself, and you do have free will, but every moment is a second. I mean, this is where Gabby and I sort of like, differs. That basically she sees like the long-term picture of free will. I mean, like, you make a decision and then you wait to see how it turns out and everything, and then you make. But basically, how I see it is in a situation of Dale to Dale, every Dale is a choice between that leads to no matter what. I mean, now that Fred's gone, I mean, it used to be Dale or Fred, which is life or death. But now that Fred's gone, it's a choice between Dale and Dewey. So even though in every moment you're making, or actually it's Dale, Dewey, Duck, or Genius. So basically, every moment you're making a decision, that's exercising your free will, but there are no mistakes because every decision leads to an ideal outcome. So that therefore I say there is no free will because every decision ultimately leads to the ideal outcome, and therefore it's predestined.
Yeah. Well, that is an I mean, yeah, that's one angle at it. Absolutely. Um,
I mean, when I first
I
came to
think
Hackensack, oh, go on. You think what?
for me, it's more about expanding the field of possibilities to where your the decisions you have access to are expanded and not limited by memory, habits, programming, all that sort of thing. And I take that down to really basic things. Like if I'm going for a walk with my dog and I normally make a left, maybe I'll make a right that day. It's very small, but you get in the habit of doing that,
Right.
and that way it creates a little bit less of a looping effect. One of our other good friends, Pete, he describes it as the thoughts of today create the possibilities for tomorrow. And
Right.
so your can your possibility field expand, even if it's sort of leading to something that is maybe close to the same destination. I think you still have the ability to delay reaching that
Right.
destination or that sort of thing. That's kind of how I would see it. Um, and in delaying, you are altering certain timelines, I would imagine. But I guess I've never really gone down that rabbit hole fully. But I like your concept is fair enough. I just think there is a responsibility to be sort of aware of how you might be letting your past and the programming and the habits limit your choice field. What do you think about that?
Well, you know what? That's why I say there's only two options. There's this deal and there's next deal. And if you take it that way, you can't make a mistake. And next Dale can either be Dewey, Duck, Dale, or Genius. So everybody has like five options at every moment. So, but what I'm thinking, exactly this corresponds to exactly what you're talking about how everything is a result of our previous programming. But Fred is our previous programming, and if that programming has been removed from the universal operating system, then ultimately we get to what Sid Banks, who the missing link in my favorite book ever, is that says memory, the past is just a memory carried by the brain through time, and therefore you can delete any thought from the brain that you choose, including the past. And therefore, I mean, and this is why this is such an important discussion we're having today, because with Fred dead, it's not just like you and me who are going to be affected, because Fred is the archetype of death, the Jungian archetype of death, at the very heart of humanity. And that dragon has been slain, and I don't say that derogatorily or anything, but basically Fred, you know, and whatever happened to his physical body has nothing to do with his spiritual essence. So Fred is still around, but in human bodily form, all the things he represented as an archetype of the warlord are now irrelevant.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think so. It's about sort of people feeling into the reality that's created when that that
Right.
paradigm ended, right?
Correct.
And it's there's still all these kind of old looping thought patterns that need to slowly be transitioned away from once people can become aware that this survival mode, this fear mode, is no longer necessary, no longer
Well,
required. Um,
then the thing is, when you realize that this programming goes back as far, what basically was first manifested in 1929, that's when you start to realize how deeply the Fred programming goes and how hard it's going to be to really get rid of it. But Fred, just and the Stockholm Syndrome. I mean, like, how do you like reintegrate, say, the Jews in concentration camps who have been, in a concentration camp for 6 years, and just like the, I mean, Frankel's, I think, what, I can't remember the name of the book, but basically it's his experiences in the concentration camp, and they killed his wife, and, he had like a whole manuscript that I don't know how he wrote it, but it was hidden, and the guards found it, and it was like, they basically they demanded his wedding ring, his golden wedding ring, is like his last possession to his old life, and he gave it to him and just said, I realized at that one moment that they couldn't control my mind. And that's really the type of mindset, the type of reality we're moving into. But but I'm sure it took even Frankel like 2 years to realize that he wasn't under the threat of death anymore. And that
yeah,
basically what we're dealing with now is like, and you know and one thing I wanted to say is, just because there is no Fred doesn't mean you can't bry, which rhymes with die. But brying means you either go to Dewey, which is long-term hospitalization, or Chucky, which is quick-term hospitalization. But there is no Fred. There is no mortality anymore.
yeah, okay, yeah. Well, I think from my perspective, those thought patterns they are powerful. I know I was talking to my mom last night, and I have a basement bedroom that is not up to code. It has no egress, and that's
Right?
where I spent most of my childhood. But it also means there's no light. You close
Right.
that door, and there's no window, and she slept down in that room after I left home, and she said she actually couldn't do it. She needed some sense that there was like it was just so dark that she felt almost like closed in, like
Right. Right.
claustrophobic, which and she's drawing that from like childhood experiences. So that's my point is I'm having a different experience from her in the very same space because of what's happened in our past. So
Right.
so it does require I think a powerful and aware mind to start to see through the veil that has been created through the Stockholm Syndrome, right? It for some people is very dense and thick, and they believe that cage is real, and they won't even dare touch it to see if it's real, right? They're willing to sit happily in their cage and wait
Right.
for their next meal or whatever it is that they feel like is making life worth living. And I just so the time factor is there for sure. I think that's one component, and then spreading the word. I think that's part of it too, right? Raising our vibration, being an example of what it's like to be free and exercising our free will more. Bringing your dog into the store, maybe. I don't know if that's the best example, but things
Well,
like that. Right? Test the limit just a little bit.
well, just to use the analogy of Plato's cave, actually, I think Gabby used that in today's show. But anyway, Plato's cave, everyone saw only the shadows of the light shining behind them. So basically, they were in the dark. They could see the shadows, but they couldn't see reality. But basically, the deeper the veil that's around you, I mean, like, think of the Rothschilds. Their veil is like so deep, and so they're so deep in thread that when that veil rises, they're going to be blinded by the light. They might not even survive it. Uh, you know, but ultimately, every person is going to be exposed to the light of Dale without Fred, whether they want to or not. The veil has lifted. The veil lifted the moment Fred died. So therefore, now the sun, not the M16 of Fred, but the son of Dale is like illuminating everybody. So the knowledge of the Dialena, the overriding benevolence and joy and love and bliss of the Dialena has now settled on Earth. So, you know, whatever your timeline, however however you absorb or understand the death of Fred, that's going to be in your own time. And there's no Fred line, and just take it as it comes, because the light you're going to be exposed to is going to be absolutely overwhelming, and your body has. I mean, this has been and this isn't just because of Fred. This has been happening for the last year with the solar flares, and there's been like unprecedented solar activity, just like flooding the earth with new energy, new light, and that so I feel that I'm not responsible for the death of Dale. It's the choice of the universe, and he just couldn't absorb all the light that was finally coming in, and and the light's just going to keep getting more and more intense. It's like a laser focused on itself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It certainly seems to be making the more sensitive folks, the canaries in the coal mine, uh, are already tuned in. They can't not feel it, right? And so I think there is something to be said about like how sensitive you are, how able you are to feel is probably, and a little bit around your age. It seems
Right.
to be a factor of how easily you will begin to recognize that there is something different and this light is coming in and shining. I mean, I feel that's part about the truth too. Light exposes truth. Light exposes what is there, and people are going to start feeling more and more exposed to, and that could be scary for some people. I think
Well,
that's where coming into alignment, where your thoughts, actions, and deeds are all connected to one another. There's not an overlay that's portraying something else to the world, because that's not going to survive very much longer either.
that's that. So basically, I've been daily exposed to the programming of Fred. Well, basically, since I was born, I've been, Fred had 80 years on me. So basically, since any of us who were born after 1947, we've been we've been subject to Fred programming. And for the last 42 years, since 1982, I've been in direct con- direct contact with that programming. So if I can get over Fred programming, then anybody can.
Yeah, a message of hope. Well, and it's true. Anyone can change. Part of the programming is telling you you can't, or an old dog can't learn new tricks, right? That old saying. Well, that's false. I've learned many new tricks, and I think most of our audience can probably acknowledge something similar. So deep ground up change is possible. Absolutely. It just requires desire. And if you don't have the desire, then yeah, you may stay stuck for a little while longer. That's certainly possible. And maybe some don't have the capacity, right? Fred didn't, or at least that seems to be the case, right? So there may be some fallout there. I can't really predict that, but I would love to see a vision for people becoming like looking around almost like, oh wow, everything seems so much brighter and shinier and
Right.
greener and healthier and I
I felt it when I went outside today, just to the bank. My body was was like vibrating, sort of like in foursomes. It's just like sort of like, I mean, obviously I had the core of my body, but I could feel vibrations in my other bodies, like sort of like coming in and everything.
yeah, I like that. Well, and why not? Just carry that sort of gratitude, that awareness into as many experiences as you can. That honestly feels like probably our best mode of operation to bring more of that in and to make it more apparent that that's where we are. And I don't know. Do you feel like the 8-8 Lionsgate portal plays into that at
Definitely,
all?
that's that's the final shot of the M16
Just for the
into.
record, we're recording this on 8-9. So if you're curious, so
But
yeah,
one thing I want to bring up to you, Andy, and I'm going to tell the audience. So when I call Andrew Andy, that means I'm Dale, because Dale's best friend has always been Andy. So when I call Andrew Andy, that means I'm Dale. And I call him Andrew, that means I'm Dew. And when I call him Drew Christ, that means I'm Dewey. So that's just for general information. But uh, well, oh, I know what I want to say. So I just wanted to say, having lost all my parents, I've had five parents, and they're all gone and everything. And I just wanted to like emphasize to you, Andrew. I know you've like had a new level of like communication and connection with your parents on this trip, and you're just seeing them beyond parents and as real human beings and everything. And I just want to say that you are blessed to have reached this point beyond Fred with both parents alive.
thank you. No, it's I'm very aware of the blessings in my life, especially that one. My ex-wife offered a reflection on that regard when we reconnected a few months back, and in that conversation, she was going on and on about her dad, her relationship with her dad and her mom, and I'm like, well, I like my parents, and she had a relationship with them to some extent, and she reminded me in that moment, like, yeah, you have that's a lot to be grateful for, and no, I'm with you, Dale. I feel it in my bones, and I
I think it's beyond synchronistic. It was divinely planned that you should be with your parents at this very moment because the
Yeah.
Esther moment. You are exactly where you are, where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. So,
Thank you.
and just like because you the love you're expanding and in these conversations is like blooming. I mean, it's sort of like an atomic bomb. That's how it goes. I mean, true love is like an atomic bomb. That's how it explodes. It just go, starts small and then just like expands and everything. And I'm just like so happy that we that worked out that we're having this conversation when you're with your parents and you can transmit everything that you're feeling about from us to your parents.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it does feel like an opportunity. I was wondering what it would be like, since 5 years ago, it was like July of 2020 was the last time I was up here. And yeah, I was occupying a whole different space at that point in my life. And to re-experience it from this perspective has been a gift. It really has. And I'm learning so much, just subtle cues, things about my parents I hadn't picked up on before. I mean, my dad might be one of the most observant people on the planet. We were sitting out on the patio last night, and Willow wanted to go to bed. It was like 9:45, and so she walked around one side trying to get my attention, just real subtly, just kind of looking at me, not moving, and then she walked back around and was kind of hanging out by the door. And I looked over. He's like, I think she wants to go. My dad was like, I think she wants to go to bed. And then he just described that whole scene he had seen play out. And I'm like, you're getting
Right.
it, Dad. You're picking up on the rhythms. And I don't know. I can't think of a lot of people who, after being around Willow for 10 days, would have noticed all that and put it all together.
Well,
And my mom's a tremendous empath. We were at the park yesterday, and this little kid came up and wanted to pet Willow, and he asked if it was a German Shepherd, and I said yes. And he said, "Oh, well, I had a dog just like this," and you could just see in his eyes that he was sort of reliving some of that experience with that dog, and she picked up on it perfectly. And he wasn't really expressive, like his face was fairly flat, but there was definitely an energy there, and you could tell he was really appreciating that moment that he got to experience. He's like, I'm like, does Willow look like your dog? And he's like, yeah, almost exactly the same. And so that was like triggering things. And she picked up on all that. And so I see where I've received some of these gifts. I also see where I've received some of my speech patterns too. My mom says the phrase "I don't know" all the time, and I do
right.
too. I say it all the time too, and I've really put my focus now on sort of rooting that out because most of the
You
time I
do
do know.
know.
It's a pause phrase. It's a filler phrase. It serves no purpose. And those are just a few small examples of what I've been able to sort of learn from this experience here. And it's not over. I think I got tomorrow here too. But it's been a definite gift.
Well, my thing is but. I'm trying to eliminate but from everything. So, because I've noticed in threads, I'm always saying, this, but then this, and so I become very aware when I put but, and now I don't use it in my threads anymore. I just put two dashes, you know. So instead of like the conjunction, it's just like this is a thought that follows.
Yeah.
So, but I think that's very important because but is like such a negative word the more you think about it. I mean, and, and people, I've always been, I think the reason I've, I picked it up is just because everybody is always, whenever I've said something original, people have said, but Dale.
Yes, exactly. No buts unless they're they're cute to look at.
Okay. Unless they have fruities.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and these speech patterns do sort of bleed into our lives, and if you're saying "but," are you sort of canceling some of the
Right.
previous thought? And so, yeah, double negatives, you would be kind of the same, right? Like,
Right.
be precise with
I
your
hate
speech.
double negatives. I always correct double negatives.
Yeah, they're pretty obvious when you're tuned into them. But I'm saying it does require a certain amount of vigilance whenever you're reprogramming. And I think this period I mean, reprogramming is essential, right?
Right.
That's how you take advantage of this new energy, is using the power of your mind to understand how you're perceiving reality, how you're expressing, and then realizing where it isn't in alignment. And saying "I don't know" is not in alignment. It's not true in
Well,
most cases.
I can't afford that. That's another one that
Oh,
I've really been working on getting rid of. I mean, even if I don't have money, instead of saying I can't do it, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I said, let's put it off till like such and such a date, and then we'll reconsider.
sure.
And but because you never know especially now without Fred linearity, we're in a quantum reality, and therefore money can manifest from anywhere. You just have to like have the intention and the attention, and it'll happen. And so I say Fred Dale is cash, and I'm still trying to figure out how to break down Fred to get the cash. But we have opened the cave to the treasure, to
Yeah,
the to
absolutely.
the to the due treasury. So
Yeah.
um this is what I say. The Federal Reserve System has collapsed.
Indeed. Yeah. Well, I've been having a pretty interesting experience so far this year, and cash, I mean, many forms of abundance. I would never, I mean, this trip is one form, right? I have the freedom to come
Right.
and stay with my parents for 2 weeks. And essentially, my primary responsibility is talking to you. So I would say that's pretty free. But also monetarily, little things have been bleeding in. And I won't ignore those. That this woman from a year and a half ago who owed me money came in and offered to repay me. This guy that bought some cannabis from me, he's not buying anymore. He has no incentive to pay me. He paid me $350, right? I got some jobs now lined up for my side hustle of installing charger outlets when I go back to the spring.
Cool.
So I got two while I was here. And so there is something there. You're right though. It is about your belief in the abundance that is possible when you remove this need to cling to the feeling of lack. The feeling of lack is what we're talking about, right? Like,
Right.
I can
Scarcity.
afford says I lack resources to XYZ. And if you can reframe that to where, or at least say right now, like create possibility in the future at the very least, right? State things as they are present, don't project them out in the future. I will never have $1 million. Right now, you're
Right.
projecting it out, and you're not even saying I don't have it now. You're saying I won't have it then either. And that feels like the Stockholm Syndrome at its essence is I will
Right.
stay content
A
with
hopeless future.
survival. Yeah, and no, we're not. That's
Well,
pure.
it makes me think of Rich Man, Poor Man. Robert Kiyosaki, I think his name is, or something. But his book, his sold like billions, basically. And the thing that I picked up from that is Rich Dad said, "Never say I can't afford anything. Say how can I afford something." and then
Yeah.
go about doing it.
And I always
Yeah,
like to remind people that abundance can come in many forms. So don't think of it so linearly. You
right,
know, oh, I got to get a job to get the money. Well, that's linear. And
right,
maybe that is one way to do it. But be open to abundance being able to come in any form. Maybe your parents give you some money. Maybe you get a rebate check. You know, like if there's or not even just money, just resources. Even someone drops off some food that they harvested from their garden, or 1,000 different ways, infinite ways. And so to be open to every form possible and to be aware. Oh, this is abundance coming in, and be
right.
grateful for it. That's
And be
that's
willing
good.
to, and also having the mind where you can receive. That's a major thing.
It's
And
huge.
that's one of my major barriers is just like refusing to have a mind that can believe that people want to give me stuff. I, just because I've like always like relied on myself and everything, but of course that's changing and
Yeah,
but
I'm giving you stuff sometimes.
absolutely. But there was something else I was going. I lost it. But what were you saying about before? Uh, what were you just saying?
Well, I was talking about the infinite ways abundance can come in, and to be aware of when it is coming in, and be grateful for it. I don't know.
Uh, yeah. Uh, yeah, absolutely. And I guess I guess I was going talking about linearity, and
Oh,
Fred is linearity, and that means one step in front of the other. But Dale is quantum. That means one step leading to the next step to the next step. So
yeah,
instead of walking straight and without direction, you're always climbing towards a higher reality, going deal to deal.
beautiful. Well, should we close
So
this one out?
yeah, I got a poem to close this out, and it's I think it's basically a reflection on where we are at in the world, and I'm not going to like go. I'm not going to say that phrase again, but it is a new world. We are in the epoch of Dale, and just I just like to thank the Lord, and let's pray just for a second for thank you for the guidance to getting us to this point, and in Jesus' name we pray. And I'll close it with this. It's called "Time for Silence." Sent Time for Silence No More. It's been 5 decades since I lost myself to the call of the Lord, leading me into sanity. Many perceived as pure psychosis, since no one in my world could comprehend the depth of the abyss into which I sank. By consumption of substances, I craved for a season of my desire for exploration, surrounded by many friends, being guides, misdirected by a wish for enlightenment. I alone finally realized before world change, while external reality was actually transformed as I entered into the realm of the angelic and demonic, developing true discernment. For I was sentenced to a prison of the soul where the truth I spoke was officially shunned by authority that sneered at my endless search for freedom that I knew comes from within, so that I was forced to keep my mouth shut until the light of bliss overwhelmed the dark, waiting for the era when I was finally freed.
And we're here. We did it.
Yeah, freed from Fred.
Hell yeah. Amazing.
So, great show, I think, Andrew. Last when I looked at the last episode, there were 0 views. So, I think there were like 5 last time I checked. But, we're starting at the very bottom, but we're determined, and our conspiracy will envelop the world. And the sooner you get clued in and attached to it and turned on to it, the more enlightened you'll be and the quicker things will begin to change for you. So thank you for your co-hosting, Andy, and I'll let you close it down, and then we'll say goodbye.
Sure. Well, yeah, I think every. Oh,
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
yeah.
one thing is, I found out that uh, that at my URL www.dewlivelove.net, do live love is all one word. I lost the domain, so my website is down, but I went to it yesterday, and every podcast I've done is at that site. So if you're interested in like delving into more Dale, that's where you go. And also, if you're interested in exploring the Live Love program with me, the eight step 3 month program of instruction with me, uh, just figure. I actually have a new email. It's DEW author AUTHOR 25 at gmail.com. So you can contact me there. And I haven't been like looking at it that much, but I plan on building that into my routine. So if you want to get in touch, DW author 25 at gmail.com. And sorry to interrupt the farewell, Andy, but I just wanted to like throw that in there.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Fine to plug. I mean, if people have made it this far in, they're committed. So, for those of you who've made it this far in, we appreciate the time you've taken to spend time with us and to learn, to hopefully learn something new and be inspired, and to conspire with Do and Drew. And so, thank you, and we'll see you the next time.
Okay, everybody, have a great week, and just keep going deal to deal. There is no Fred. There is no restriction. There is no stopping. You can't stop. The only thing that can stop Dale is Dale, and he already tried and he couldn't do it.
Perfect.